the sensation of the millennium. Sergey Brin, the co-owner of Google, who fought against Trump with all his might and with all the power of Google, has become a Republican. Well, let's dig deeper. Imagine a boy in Leningrad, 1979, 6 years old. His parents are scientists, his father is a mathematician, his mother is a researcher at NASA. They apply to emigrate. The KGB summons his father, warns him, threatens him. The family leaves anyway. First to Vienna, then to America. The boy grows up and creates a company that will change the world. He will become one of the 4 richest people on planet Earth. And for his entire adult life, he will vote for the Democrats. He will donate to liberal causes. He will say Trump is deeply offensive to America, and he will believe that everyone should pay their fair share. But it turns out he understood fair share a little differently. Not the way progressive Democrats who are very eager to get their hands on other people's money understand it. And at one point, everything changed. His name, as you know, is Sergey Brin. The story of his turnaround, U-turn as they say in America, is a story about how socialism is not recognized right away. Sometimes it's only when it comes to you, knocks on your door, peeks into your wallet, and you say, wait a second, guys, so it turns out you're thieves. Another story that amazed everyone happened in what used to be called the Baltics in the former Soviet Union. The uproar over Zelensky's statements that Israel was buying stolen grain hadn't even died down yet when what is now called the Baltic boomerang emerged. Sunday, April 19th, Vladimir Zelensky. He gave a television interview. According to him, the Kremlin is preparing for a new wave of mobilization and is suppressing social media to prevent unrest within the country. And then there was a phrase that was heard clearly in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius, more clearly than on Bankova Street. Some countries, for example, one of the Baltic states, as Zelensky said, are not ready for serious resistance. It was said as if in passing, yes, among a series of hypothetical scenarios, but in diplomacy, there is no such thing as in passing, especially when it comes to the sovereignty of allies. But let's start with the astonishing phenomenon that has been called the withdrawal of billionaires from socialism. Can you imagine that? A billionaire socialist. A billionaire socialist. The fact that billionaires could even be socialists is astonishing in itself. But the fact that even they started to realize it, I said even on purpose, became a sensation. Where did our billionaire come from? Mikhail Brin, Sergey's father, was a mathematician in the Soviet Union. He wanted to work in the field of economics, but Jews in the USSR were barred from certain professions. It was done unofficially, systematically, methodically. Mikhail, like all of us, understood this and made a decision that changed the life of the whole family. In 1979, the Brin family applied to leave the USSR. People working in sensitive sectors who applied to leave were immediately fired from their jobs. They were called traitors. Quite often, they were denied permission to leave. The KGB would summon them for questioning. You became a refusenik, that is, a person who is suspended between two worlds. The Brins, in fact, were among the lucky ones, and Brin was lucky. They were allowed to leave. Through Vienna and Paris, they made their way to Maryland. Mikhail got a position as a mathematics professor at the University of Maryland. Yevgenia, Sergey's mother, became a researcher at NASA. Sergey was 6 years old. He remembers the emigration vaguely, but his parents remembered well, and they told him about it. And then comes the story that America loves to tell about itself. And in this case, it's true. Sergey Brin entered the University of Maryland at the age of 15. At 19, he transferred to Stanford for a PhD in computer science. There he met Larry Page. In 1998, the two of them registered a company in a garage. They called it Google. What happened next? Well, the whole world knows. Google became the most widely used tool in human history. Search engine, maps, YouTube, Gmail, Android translator, cloud storage, self-driving cars, artificial intelligence. By the age of 26, Sergey Brin's fortune was around, well, somewhere in the area of $273 billion, the fourth richest person on Earth. Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, and then Sergey, a man who came to America with a suitcase and a Soviet accent, became one of the four richest people in the history of our civilization. It would seem that the story is over, the American dream in its purest form, but ladies and gentlemen, this is only the beginning. Because what Brin did with this wealth politically was the complete opposite of what you might expect. And to expect that from a man who fled Soviet socialism, and that's the mystery we're going to unravel now. For many years, Sergey Brin was almost uninterested in politics, but when he did take an interest, he always ended up in the liberal camp. I even suspect he didn't really know what truly liberal ideas were, but he always found himself among those who called themselves liberals. In 2008, he donated money to a campaign supporting same-sex marriage in California. He supported Obama's re-election in 2012. With his involvement, Google built a corporate culture that became a symbol of progressiveness. Everything progressive that exists in Silicon Valley, that is, diversity, was insanely important. Inclusivity, the climate agenda, minority rights. Well, in 2021, Brin quietly created a nonprofit organization that spent at least $88 million on the climate and environmental agenda. This is not a public gesture. This is real money for real programs, done almost in passing, as if it were a matter of course. And when Trump won the election in November 2016, Brin, at a closed meeting with Google employees, called it deeply offensive. The video leaked to the press. He did not retract his words. A man from Soviet Leningrad voted like a typical liberal professor from Berkeley. Why? Most likely because he left as a very young boy, because his political formation took place in American universities. Stanford, the academic environment, his circle consisted of people with PhDs and progressive views. His business thrived under the Democrats. There was little constant pressure, little regulatory pressure. And most importantly, socialism, which his family had fled from, seemed impossible. Something historical, something Soviet. The Wars of the Roses, a war here in California? What are you talking about? It couldn't be, or could it? In 2025, the progressive wing of the California Democratic Party put forward an idea that just a few years earlier would have seemed impossible in America. It was called the wealth tax. That is, it's on what you've already earned. You've already paid taxes on it when you received it. When you built all that up, whatever you did, you paid taxes on the gains, on all of it. Not on income, but on assets. Meaning things that have already been taxed many times and are absolutely yours. A one-time tax, as the Californians said, but at the same time, it's huge, 5%. Gentlemen, can you imagine what 5% of the wealth of all the rich residents of California is? That is, from everyone whose wealth exceeds, let's say, $1 billion. One time, for the sake of education, for health care, for food assistance. Does that sound reasonable to you? For Sergey Brin, with a fortune of $273 billion, how much would that be? $13.6 billion. Just like that, in a single payment, with money that mostly exists not in cash but in stocks, Google stocks and various other stocks. To pay this tax, you need to sell stocks. Selling the stocks will crash the price. It's a chain reaction. Brin realized that politics, as it turns out, isn't abstract. The politics his buddies followed is called something else. It's called confiscation, just because they really wanted to. Oh, look how much money we can grab at once and then wait 2 years and do it again. And something clicked here. Because he had already seen this, not in a textbook, not in a documentary, but in his childhood, in Leningrad, in the stories of his parents, friends, and acquaintances, when the state decided how much you were allowed to have and took the rest away. But taxes are only part of the story, because at the same time a woman appeared in his life. Well, as they say, cherchez la femme, and she changed not only his political views. Her name is Gary Lynn Gilbert Soto. She is 32 years old. She is a conservative influencer on Instagram. She calls herself a holistic health coach and a clean meat enthusiast. She appeared on a reality show, that is Wonder Rump Rules, and calls Trump her best friend. The relationship with Brin began in 1923 after Brin's divorce from Nicole Shalahan, who later became Robert Kennedy Jr.'s vice presidential candidate. The political spectrum of his former partners is a story of its own. Jerry Lynn posted photos of Brin wearing a red MAGA hat at Trump's inauguration in January 1925 on her social media. They were sitting in the seats of honor in the hall. After the ceremony, she wrote, "Huge thanks to my beloved. Without him, I wouldn't have met the president or attended the inauguration." Trump, at a dinner in the White House in September 1925, where Brin was sitting next to Tim Cook, publicly called her Brin's wonderful MAGA girlfriend. This is Trump. Gary Lynn was sitting across from the president. This is not a random meeting at a party. This is a new social circle. These are new conversations. This is a new perspective on the world. Of course, as a cynic, I'll say, the girl has nothing to do with it. It's just about the money. A $13 billion tax would turn anyone into a Republican. That's right. Brin himself answered this question. Here are his words. In December of that same 2025, at a Christmas party in Northern California, in a real treehouse among the sequoias, with the singer Janelle Monáe and a huge Yeti with glowing red eyes. Against this backdrop, Brin took Governor Gavin Newsom aside and told him, "I'm leaving. California has become impossible." Geraldine was standing nearby. She was also talking to Newsom, trying to convince him that the tax would destroy the state's economy. And according to eyewitnesses, she added that she was ready to forgive the governor for his policies because he, the handsome Newsom, was standing under a tree in the cold, listening as one of the richest people in the world declared war on him. A month later, Newsom publicly stated that he would work against the adoption of the billionaire tax. That is, one conversation in a house changed the policy of America's largest state. And meanwhile, Brin was already preparing to move. December 31st was the deadline. They had to make it before then. After this deadline, if the tax passed, it would apply to California residents. He bought an estate for $42 million on the shore of Lake Tahoe. On the Nevada side, and on one side it's California, on the other it's Nevada, a state with no income tax. By the way, he now comes to Google's California office about once every 2 weeks, but officially he lives in Nevada. And he said things to the press that his liberal friends from Stanford read in complete amazement. "I fled from socialism with my family in the 1970s. I know how devastating and oppressive the society created in the Soviet Union was. I don't want California to end up in the same place." Did you just hear the words of a man who spent 30 years funding policies that led exactly to the place he's now afraid to end up? How is that possible? And what does it tell us about the nature of ideological delusions among wealthy people? Let's look at Brin's specific actions over the past 12 months. These aren't just words. This is money in action. On May 25, Brin comes to the fundraiser with Vice President J.D. Vance and donates almost $500,000. To whom? To the Republican National Committee, a person who has never donated to Republicans in his life, who said it was a shame that he was elected. Trump, this terrible Republican. September 25th, a dinner at the White House. Brin personally thanks Trump and is very grateful for his support of technology companies. Trump smiles, Tim Cook is sitting next to Brin, and Garin is across from the president. December 25th, moving to Nevada, an estate for $42 million official change of residency. March 26th, Brin. An advisory council on technology has been appointed by the White House. Next to him are Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg. All of them went through this path around the same time. Silicon Valley, Zuckerberg is turning around. This is it. That's the very U-turn. Thank God they didn't make it to socialism and turn back. At the same time, Brin donates money to the Republican candidate for governor of California, a candidate who will later be supported by Trump. In April 2026, Brin invested in a campaign against the billionaire tax, that is, against the Democrats, an amount of approximately $57 million, then $120 million, then another $25, then another $9. The Super PAC office is registered in Reno, Nevada, $57 million against a tax that could have cost him $13 billion. This isn't politics, it's an investment with a 22,000% return, but is it just about the money? This is the most important thing to think about. Sergey Brin lived in America for 30 years and voted for politicians he considered progressive. At the same time, he himself was living proof of capitalism built on work. His story is a story of the free market, the idea, the garage, hard work, risk. The result, no government subsidies, no such redistribution, pure capitalism. And yet he financed policies that gradually moved California in a direction opposite to his own success. Why does this happen with smart, wealthy, educated people? Because socialism rarely comes with a red flag and a march. It comes with good intentions. One tax, but it's for poor people, and this is for poor children. One regulation to protect the environment, one law for equality. Each step sounds reasonable, each next one is a bit easier than the previous one. And at some point you check the account and see they want to steal $13 billion from me, which they didn't earn, on which I've already paid all the taxes, or they just want to steal. They're just thieves with a single payment. Why? Because the majority decided that's democracy. The majority decides you pay $13 billion. Snap, damn! Brin snapped at 52, around 50 Zuckerberg, 40 Bezos. Around the same time, all the richest people of Silicon Valley followed the same path at about the same time, between 2023 and 2026. Coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. The Democratic Party crossed the line. It came after the money of the people who were funding it. And they were like, just a second ago I was giving because I thought it was necessary, because I wanted to, and now you came to rob me, or what? So that means Brin is not alone. Brin changed his party affiliation. This is Google, this is Alphabet. It's one of the largest employers in California, one of the biggest taxpayers in the state, at least while it was still paying taxes there. When someone like that leaves, it's a signal for other billionaires, for venture investors, for startups, for companies that are choosing where to register. California has already been losing population since 2020.
Больше людей, чем любой другой штат США.
Young families are moving to Texas, Florida, Nevada, Arizona, and now even billionaires are leaving too. The tax base is shrinking. What we say in New York is happening. Meanwhile, with that jerk Mandami mom, Danny mom, give it to, government spending is rising. California's budget deficit in 2025 exceeded $70 billion. Deficit. They collect money, squeeze out everything they can. We have the most expensive gasoline. Everything is the most expensive. And yet they still lack $70 billion. Well, we should just be happy about that. Newsom is cutting programs he once feared and promised to develop. Progressive young people run into math. It's like a cold shower, and they think, why did we learn this damn math? And most interestingly, it was Newsom himself, to whom Brin said everything to his face at the Christmas party. Now he's fighting against the billionaire tax, the prison governor, a Democrat defending billionaires from his own party. Because, well, he got it. It finally dawned on him. Maybe under that sequoia or somewhere else. If they leave, the money will flow out, there will be no jobs, and California will be gone. In the form of a political project, not just politics, it's a test of ideas, of reality. What does Brin's story tell us in a broader sense? People don't change because of arguments. When an abstract idea turns into a concrete bill, $13 billion for some, $100,000 for others, and even less for someone else, but it becomes concrete, the abstraction disappears. And theoretically, of course, we should help. Then you can add whatever you want. Wait a second, they're thieves after all. Brin knew about socialism theoretically. His parents told him about it. He listened, nodded, kept voting for the progressives because it was comfortable, socially acceptable, it fit his environment. And then socialism came with a specific price tag. Italy, and 30 years of theoretical knowledge instantly turned into nothing, into smoke. His father fled from the Soviet state, which decided who you could be and how much you were allowed to have. The son fled from the Californian state, which decided how much you were allowed to keep. The distance between these two escapes is 47 years and about $273 billion. Yes, yes. Do you know what inspires me about all this? People are capable of changing. Even smart, successful people with strong convictions can face reality and say, I was wrong. Brin could have stayed silent, quietly moved to Nevada, and kept pretending that nothing happened. Instead, he gave money to the Republicans, joined the White House Advisory Board, told Newsom to his face what he thought, and spoke publicly about Soviet socialism. That takes a certain amount of courage. Ladies and gentlemen, even when you're one of the 4 richest people in the world, that takes courage. Because in his social circle, that's called being a traitor. In Silicon Valley, a MAGA hat is like a red rag to a very angry bull, and yet he put it on. Maybe it's just about taxes, maybe not. Maybe the boy from Leningrad finally remembered what his family was running from? Well, in my opinion, better late than never. Like the video, it helps YouTube promote it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment.
Вы верите, что Брин изменил?
Out of conviction or just calculation? I'm interested in your opinion. I'll be waiting. Tallinn, Monday. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna didn't raise his voice. He did something worse. He said what he said very quietly, but it echoed across half the world. Such statements, he is right about that. By Zelensky, that does not match our intelligence data. We do not see Russia concentrating troops or preparing for a military attack on NATO or the Baltic countries. He added a phrase in which diplomatic protocol barely conceals irritation. These statements, dear President Zelensky, do not make our cooperation any easier. Translated from the language of diplomacy to plain language, you irritate us terribly. Well, I would say with your foolishness. The leader of the Estonian Conservative Party, EKRE, Martin Helme, spoke even more harshly, I would say. Yes, he called Zelensky's words rhetorical mooing. He called it an attempt to instill fear in Western capitals in order to squeeze out another batch of weapons from that fear. Well, that's diplomatic protocol for you. He was 100% absolutely right. Vilnius, Wednesday. Lithuanian Prime Minister Inga Ružienė waited another 3 days and struck a little harder. She directly advised the Ukrainian president. What exactly she said in her own language is unknown, but after that she told him to avoid intimidating rhetoric. So she somehow singled out Zelensky like, yes, avoid intimidating rhetoric. She said there are no grounds whatsoever for such statements. That's a lie.
Литва, член НАТО, активно вкладывает.
For its own defense, it borders Belarus and it monitors hybrid provocations daily. If something were being prepared, we would know. The Russian-language headlines that day were blunter still. Lithuania slapped Zelensky in the face after Estonia. 2 blows in a row from 2 NATO frontline states to the president of the country they had helped with everything they had. Behind the scenes in the Baltics, a new script is being written, quietly, without any manifestos. Support for Kyiv remains, but they no longer want to play the role of the next victim in someone else's drama. Their argument is simple and bitter. A country that is publicly declared defenseless loses investors, loses tourists, and its own citizens lose their peace of mind. Especially if its own intelligence services don't see what the neighboring ally is talking about. The neighboring Ukrainian ally has caused us harm. Something that is extremely harmful to us. So, because of a rhetorical device, a rift appeared in the relationship. It's no longer diplomatic. The motives can be debated. There are 3 versions being discussed. Zelensky was trading on fear to keep the flow of Western weapons going. Zelensky was diverting attention from Mindichgate, the biggest corruption scandal of his presidency, where the names of people close to him are increasingly mentioned alongside words like $110 million Energoatom, and so on. And Zelensky sincerely believes in what he says. No one believes it, but that's his version. But then it's strange that even the very countries he's supposedly protecting don't believe it. Most likely it's a mix of both, and that's the main problem. When a leader starts using fear as currency, he spends something politics cannot replenish. It's called the trust of allies. In Tallinn and Vilnius, trust isn't a sentiment, it's a tool for survival. The people of the Baltics remember all too well how carelessly spoken words in foreign capitals once redrew their map. That's why they want something simple from Zelensky. Tell the truth, stick to the point. Don't make things up for us, and don't spread fear. Those who sell fear sooner or later find that the buyers have all disappeared, especially the neighbors who were supposedly meant to be inspired by this fear, but instead felt like props in someone else's play. And in this perhaps lies the most striking and important lesson of the week. In the free world, allies are not an audience that you can spoon-feed the emotions you want. They are actors with their own intelligence services, their own pride, their own voice. When they are told things about their own country that are not confirmed by their own data, they respond. At first quietly, then loudly, and then they fall silent. This week they haven't fallen silent yet. They're still speaking loudly, but. This is what I was talking about. A good guy, a talented person. Completely unsuitable for the role he was put into. That's all. Goodbye.